All right, we've roped in a law clerk and a legal researcher at the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services to weigh in on this matter, Sohela Surajpal. Sohela, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So a number of South Africans have weighed in on this particular issue. Some prisoners, of course, have complained anonymously to media houses that the food is so bad that it's not of good standard, it's half cooked and not even fit for an animal, some have said. What's your response, firstly, to the Portfolio Committee for Correctional Services decision saying that the food everything is fine? And more importantly, what are the legal rights of prisoners where nutrition and meal plans are concerned?
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here and to be talking to you about this. I'll start by addressing, the situation on the ground. I think that the Portfolio Committee Chair is correct. This is a meal plan that has been reviewed by the department internally, by the Portfolio Committee, and now by JIX. We've had access to the meal plan as well. And there are no striking issues on the face of it. As the chair noted, the main change is that certain types of animal protein, meat, have been decreased in their frequency, and in their place you have the introduction of alternative proteins, things like beans or soya mince. Which is above board. We at JIX recognize that the department has the discretion to make operational decisions like this, to decide what kind of foods are appropriate, are cost-effective, are nutritious. Our interest is in determining whether inmates' rights are being protected and upheld. And that's the second part of your question. What are the department's obligations? What are inmates' rights around nutrition? The Constitution is progressive. It says that arrested and detained people have rights. They have the right to dignified conditions of detention, and that includes to adequate nutrition at state expense. The Post-Apartheid Correctional Services Act goes a little bit further. It says that inmates have the right to adequate nutrition to promote good health, that certain special categories of inmates must have their nutritional needs catered to, like pregnant women, like children, like people who are ill, and that where it's reasonable and practical, dietary regulations must take into account religious and cultural beliefs and preferences. Does that actually happen on the ground? In most cases, we think yes. We generally see inmates being given sufficient food, 3 meals a day. They are given balanced diets. The special diets for people who are ill or who have cultural or religious needs are provided. But there are problems, and those problems aren't necessarily related to this new meal plan, but to broader issues within the prison environment, to overcrowding, to poor infrastructure. We were recently in Durban inspecting prisons there, and the awaiting trial center at Durban, this main prison, its kitchen has been shut down. And it's been shut down because it's in such awful condition that it was no longer considered safe or hygienic to prepare food there. There was mold and mildew all over the ceilings. There was water leaking from upper floors. We were told that it was the result of water from showers and toilets in the cells below seeping into the kitchen. That's obviously not a hygienic way for food to be prepared. And so inmates do have legitimate concerns about the food that they are being served, although in this case, these seem more related to general conditions within prison rather than to the meal plan specifically.
Okay, so in this instance, then, it is enough that the members of the committee whilst they were doing their oversight, even some of them saying that they've tasted the food. So you wouldn't really want more evidence rather than that in terms of just the how substandard the food is. And that does not necessarily violate the prisoner's rights, as I think I'm hearing you correctly, because there are obvious situations, as you've just described, in KwaZulu-Natal, where there are rights that are being violated because the quality of the infrastructure is not adequate.
You're right, and those, I think, are quite distinct. But of course, at JICS, we continuously monitor this issue. So every time we inspect a prison, and we inspect multiple prisons in a quarterly and yearly cycle, we will check the kitchens, we will check and taste the food, like the chair mentioned, and we continuously receive complaints from inmates that we then consider and attempt to resolve. So it's definitely an issue where there is potential for abuse and where we monitor things quite closely.
Have there been any past legal cases in South Africa regarding the quality of food for prisoners? I mean, just again, going back to that example that you have cited of where you do find, serious deficiencies in terms of how the food is being served and where, importantly, it is being served. And in that case, what would happen? What would be the proper processes to follow?
So there haven't been major cases that I'm aware of on this issue. A lot of the complaints that we receive at JICS are resolved internally. Our officials work with the department, work with prison heads to try to resolve those issues before they ever reach a court. But I think I've told you what the Act provides. There are certain standards. They're pretty broad standards. They don't go into a great amount of detail dictating to the department exactly what it could or must do. But an inmate who feels that those standards aren't being met would, of course, be entitled to approach a court and would have to show that court that, for example, the diet they're being provided for is impairing their health in some way, or that they are a pregnant woman or a special category of inmate, they are ill and are not being provided with adequate nutrition, or finally that their cultural or religious beliefs aren't being catered to. In my experience, we're able to resolve those issues before they reach the level of proceeding to court. And in fact, the closure of that kitchen in the awaiting trial section at Durban happened without legal intervention. It happened after the Portfolio Committee and the Minister and the National Commissioner visited Durban and agreed that those conditions were not humane and could not continue in that way.
Yeah, so there is, indications of proper oversight in as far as that is concerned. But just as a final question, I mean, we obviously heard from the chair how the extent the department actually takes the meal plans seriously, to the extent, as you also say, caters for, unique circumstances, including pregnancy, including, of course, religious basis. We heard there about accommodating various religions, including those that are in Ramadan and other Muslim inmates. But just in as far as, the legal challenges and precedents, if any, can family members or advocacy groups, enter this kind of debate and fray and perhaps, speak on behalf of these prisoners?
Absolutely. And I think at JICS, we would welcome that. We take complaints from family members, from outside bodies representing prisoners. And there are a number of civil society organizations or NGOs, public interest, law clinics that do take on issues relating to prisoners. But not enough, because our prisons are in dire state. When we visited those prisons in Durban, we found gross levels of overcrowding. We found dilapidated infrastructure. We found complaints relating to healthcare, to the amount of exercise that inmates were given, the amount of time they spent outside of their cells, the rehabilitation programs that were accessible to them. And so there's even if this particular complaint proves to be unfounded or unwarranted, there is a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure prisons do comply with our constitutional standards of human dignity. And whether they're coming to us at JIX or whether they're pursuing this through advocacy or litigation, I think family members and outside interested groups are always welcome to intervene.